What's up, party people? Welcome back to the channel. I am Nicole from SewGnar Sewing Patterns, and in today's video I am making a new to the channel pattern. It's been what feels like forever since I've introduced somebody else's pattern on the channel, and I'm so excited to bring this one to you. Now, this gal made this pattern, this free pattern, back in March, and when she first put it out, I was all over it like white on rice, and I really love the design of it. I love all the little details that she put into it. And naturally, once I started making it, I started tweaking it and kind of making it to my liking. And yeah, that's what we're going to do today. So the very first iteration that I made of this pattern, I made it almost explicitly as written. And from there, I was off to the races with customizations and things like that. So it's called the It Gurl crossbody pattern. It's by Jordan Porter Handmade. It's a free pattern. She has a full size and a mini size. There are so many ways that you can customize it, and color blocking and using webbing. Those are two really great ways to add a lot of pizzazz to this already fantastic base pattern. So here's the very first one that I made. I love the way that she has all these different sections. So as I mentioned, the color blocking, you can do so many different colors with all the different areas on this bag. So in this one, I did agave, brown, and then golden slate waves here. And for the very first iteration, the only things that I really changed up is I used my big hardware instead of her strap attachments. I added one slip pocket in between the straps on the back, and then I made the handles rolled handles. So pretty straightforward, but I was having issues getting consistent corners. So the way that this bag is made, you have hard corners on both bottom edges. And if you know me or follow me for any length of time, I'm very particular. And so I couldn't get consistent results with that. So I went back to the drawing board and I decided to combine all of these pieces into one big gusset piece. And I started playing with that in the design, which then you might recognize this bag because I did a set of these back in the summertime and I introduced them on my vending table. And that was really the only time that you would have seen me with this pattern since it came out. This is the last one in that little series that I put out over the summer. And this one started because Jordan posted either her bag or somebody else had quilted the front and back panels, and I just knew that I had to try that out. So I got to work pretty quickly on that, and it turned into several of these bags. I just couldn't stop making them. It's like Pringles, you know? Once you pop, you can't stop. So on this one, I did a 1 by 1 inch block weave here, and I used flex foam. And listen, the foam creates such a cool texture, and because the stitching is so close together, it has a nice structure to it as well. The foam is so nice and light, but it's still really flexible, but it can take a beating. This flex foam, you can really manipulate it when you're sewing it, and it's not going to cause like permanent wrinkles or anything like that. I love flex foam for this style bag. So big bag, very, very lightweight. But anyway, so I combined the gusset pieces, and you can see here I made it all one full piece. And I found that to be really helpful for me. And my corners were starting to look sharper and crisper, and so I really enjoyed that. I also, in this run of bags, added my, what is that called? A sunglasses pouch. And I did the really cool zipper pocket on both sides to add some more organization areas because of the quilting on the exterior. I didn't want to add any more pockets or anything like that. So this was the style until today's video. And in today's video, we will be making this version, which is pretty similar to the yellow, but you can see instead of the 1 by 1 block weave, I did a 1.5 inch diagonal diamond weave. And it's so pretty, so sophisticated, so elegant. I love the bag in all one color as well. And I did want to bring back some of that detail work because that's what originally drew me to the pattern when Jordan put it out, was I liked all the pieced sections. So I did section back out that piece on the gusset. So these are the gusset tops. And then I did leave the sides and the base all one piece to make it a little bit easier to construct. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how I did that. You will be able to find all of my amendments and all of my measurements down below in the description box. There is not a printout. I will link to Jordan's original pattern. You can also, if you want to make it with all the different sections and really go nuts with the color blocking, highly, highly suggest using her original measurements. But if you want to make a bag how I made mine with the singular gusset, then be sure to look in the description box down there. I think that's really it. Everything else is pretty straightforward. Of course, I cover the whole entire construction of the bag. Here is another one that I made. I just love this brick color. I'm transitioning into more fall colors since the seasons are changing here in the South, but I couldn't resist the super funky, like retro 70s vibes. Very groovy on the inside here. And I had these cassette tape zipper pulls in my stash, and this one's so fun. This lining is by Libs Elliott. If you're interested, there's all different colorways of it too. Okay, without further ado, enjoy the video. All right, for my exterior, I'm using this Golden Slate Waves from Fabric Funhouse. I love this one. I feel like it's earth tony, but with just a little bit of pizzazz because of the gold all throughout. So anyways, I have my gusset piece, and then I have my gusset top, and then I have my main, so main front, main back, and then these are my main bottom pieces. And then I'm also adding a sunglasses pouch, so I cut 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches, and then I angled this top edge about 1/2 inch just to help with folding later on. Now all of these pieces are prepped and interfaced with Flex Foam 77, and I kept it 1/2 inch from each border to keep it out of my seam allowance. I also have my 2 handles and my crossbody strap cut as well. Now the interior of the bag has a really cool layout for the pockets, and I'm going to be doing a pocket on both sides, so I cut out 2 sets of this contraption type situation here. In the original pattern, she gives you one big measurement to cut out of, but I have found that for me it's easier to break it down into these individual pieces. So I have the pocket bottom, pocket top, the sides, and then this piece I call the topper. And the zipper will actually be inset right in here, and we will be layering these and sewing all of this together to create one main interior panel. And then for the zipper pockets themselves, I cut out one big piece that will be a regular folded pocket on the inside, and then I cut out a second set of interior pockets that I cut like a normal pocket that you use for the double berth method, because that's what we will be doing in today's pattern. The pattern is written as a berth bag, but it has an interior seam, and so I'm adding a second berthing hole to alleviate that. So I cut 2 pocket pieces, and then I did leave the bottom 1/2 inch uninterfaced to reduce bulk once we get to that area. And then out of the lining, I also have my 2 gusset pieces. Now, I did not do the gusset topper on the interior. I just combined it to be one piece. But because I didn't have enough fabric to cut this in one big piece, so I cut it in 2 smaller pieces, and I'm just going to piece it together to make one main gusset piece. This is also the way that you would do directional fabric. You would want to cut it and piece it in the center. And all of these measurements, my whole cut list will be down in the description box. So check down there for everything as I have gone over in this little intro video. Now for hardware, we have 2 zippers with the pulls. I have my tags over here. I have the exterior tag. This is my little interior tag that I'll tuck into the sunglasses pouch. And then this one will be somewhere fun. And this says, turn the page, start a new chapter. So that's a fun one. And then I have all of my strap situation happening here. I will be doing a 3/4 inch strap. So I have 2 lobster clasps. I have my big hardware that I will be using to attach it to the exterior of the bag. This is available on my website. I have a strap slide here. And then to close the bag up, I will be doing a double cap rivet snap. If you want to do like a turn lock or any other type of closure, you can certainly do that. But the bag is not written with any type of closure. But I do like to have at least something in the top center just to have, you know, the capability of closing it should you want to. And then of course rivets will be used throughout the pattern. All right, let's kick it. We are going to start on our handles. So I have the length of my handle. I went and marked a line right down the center, and then I took some 1/2 inch tape and laid it right on top of that line that I just made. And what you're going to do, peel your tape, and then you're going to fold your strap in to that 1/2 inch mark that you made along both long edges. Now, once you get it folded in toward the center, it's going to look like this. And then you go to your machine and you're going to stitch just outside of that fold line, which will keep that whole section closed. And then I want to create the rolled handle area. So what I've done is I found my center in the middle of my strap, and then I measured 5.5 inches to the right and then 5.5 inches to the left. In this area from here to here is where I'm going to be creating the rolled portion. So you need to clip between those two marks. And then you're going to go to your machine and you're going to stitch starting at the first mark all the way down to the second mark. Be sure to backstitch well at beginning and end for both of your handles. All right, if you are doing the rolled handle, then I do suggest adding a little rivet here at the end of your stitch line. It just adds an extra layer of security for when the bag is being used. And so here are my now completed straps or handles, and I will move these to the side and then we'll get started on the front and back main panels. So for the front and back main panels, you can leave them plain without any quilting at all, or you can quilt the entire panel, or if you want to, you can quilt just the center that will be within the two handle ends down on the front of the panel. So it's totally up to you. I think that it would look great any way that you decide to go. So I'm going to do a 1.5 inch thick diagonal grid, and that'll create oblong diamonds along the entire pattern. So I'm just going to pick where I want to start, and then I'm going to use that line to measure all the rest of my lines. So I'm measuring 1.5 inches on my ruler here, and I'm lining 1.5 inches up on those tick marks that I just made to create my next grid line, and then I'll move through the entire panel that way. Now, I don't love to make my marks with a silver marking pen just because it's a little bit more challenging to get off, but my chalk pen has decided that it doesn't want to work anymore, so RIP. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mark out my second panel here, and then I'm going to go to the machine and I'm just going to stitch over every single line that I just drew to create that waffle design. Here are my completed quilted panels. I just love this look that it gives, and it feels really cool too. So now we are going to attach our handles to the panels. And what I've done is I've just put a little bit of tape here along the back side to help it stay in place once I stick it onto the panel. So I'm going to peel the paper and measure over 2 inches from the side. And then using the edge of my ruler, I'm going to align my strap and tape it into place, and then repeat that for the rest. All right, once they're in place, we need to mark our stitch line end point. So you can really stop your stitches wherever you want, but I like to sew up 7 inches. So I'm going to mark up here 7 inches, And that will tell me when I need to pivot, sew across, and then back down the other side. And then what that does is it also leaves some room here between the top, and I'm going to add 2 rivets for that additional security. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my machine. I'm gonna stitch up the side, across, and back down using 1/8 seam allowance on both of my panels. Rivets are pressed and set into place, and I love to do this now on my bags just because that becomes the first line of defense. Should the end user pull on this handle really roughly, it'll have a lot harder of a time going through these rivets than it will this thread, my stitch line. So we're all done there. Next up, we're going to take our exterior bottom, we're going to lay it right side down and sandwich our straps, and then clip this into place along the bottom edge. And I'm going to go to the machine, I'm going to stitch just across the bottom, and I'm going to flip and top stitch, and it's going to end looking just like this. And I added my nameplate. I just measured down the center and kind of just chose where I wanted it to be. I like putting it down here on this bottom area because then it doesn't mess with the stitch lines for the quilting. And if your quilting is off at all, then you might notice that it sits a little funky. So removing that possibility totally by putting it to the exterior bottom is the move, in my opinion. All right, next up we have to complete our gusset. This one is pretty simple. We're going to lay the gusset top on the gusset main piece up here on the short edge, clip, stitch, and then we're going to flip and top stitch. You can let your seam allowance go either direction. That's totally dealer's choice. All stitched up. Here's what my gusset looks like. Now I chose to attach all of my gusset pieces into one, I mean with the exception of these top pieces, but instead of having the 2 sides and the base and then the top pieces, I did the majority of it all one piece just to have a more streamlined, cohesive look. And it also alleviates a little bit of that excess bulk from having all of the seams within the gusset. So that's why I chose to do it like this, but you can certainly do it as the pattern is written. Jordan has done a fantastic job with designing it, but I just combined all the measurements to get this one gusset situation going here. So now next up, we need to put the gusset onto the exterior panel. And for this application, I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. What we're going to do is we lay the right sides together. Once we get the gusset down here toward the bottom, you can see where it would run off the main panel. We're going to measure a 1/2 inch up from there and make a little snip, which will allow us to turn the gusset and center it on the bottom of the panel. And then we're gonna do the same thing over here, measure a 1/2 inch, snip into the gusset, and then trail it up on the left-hand side. So we're going to start up here. And my goal is to have a perfect fitting gusset. Now that might not be the case. I find that every time I make a bag, things, you know, sometimes don't always work out the way that I want them to. So if I need to do any adjustments, I will show you on here. But so I've got this first side measured, or clipped down rather, and I'm going to measure up a 1/2 inch from the bottom, mark on my gusset, and then snip into my gusset about 3/8 of an inch. So I like to put my clip all the way next to that little snip. And I'm going to pivot and just kind of fold my gusset until my bottom edges line up. And now you might find that you need to snip in a little bit more, But what I like to do is if you just kind of pull the bottom of the gusset toward you, it should create a nice flat edge for you to clip, just like that. And this is a little misleading. I have this section of my bottom here that I could trim off. I'm gonna go ahead and do that so that it doesn't look like it's not meeting up correctly. There we go. And then same thing right here on this corner. I need to measure 1/2 inch. Snip into the gusset only. Put a clip right on that snip, and then pivot and fold your gusset up. Now on this side, I'm going to marry the top edges here, and then I will work out whatever I need to once I get my top edge clipped. So it looks like mine is just a tad short for whatever reason, but that's fine. I'm just gonna work my way back around and make adjustments. All right, that looks good. So now I'm going to go to the machine, and again, I'm going to be using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to stitch a 1/2 inch. I'm going to back stitch really well up here, come all the way down, and then I'm just going to stitch right off my panels. I'm going to back stitch really well down here, stitch off, clip my stitches, or clip my thread, and then I'm going to pivot, and then again, 1/2 inch, and then 1/2 inch. And now what you want to be sure of is that you're stitching right up to that little snip or over it. Because we only snipped about 3/8 inch in, that shouldn't be an issue, but you don't want a little tiny hole peeking out whenever you flip your bag right side out. All stitched, and what you can do is check your corners before you move on. So just flip them and push them out and make sure that you have a decently crispy corner. I'm happy with that. And yep, okay, so once you're happy with everything, then trim up your seam allowances. I'm going to leave about the top inch so that I have an easier time top stitching later on. All right, now we're going to repeat that entire process with our remaining panel, right sides together. I have my gusset side up for this. All right, I'm all stitched and trimmed, and so I want to flip it right side out and just take a gander at everything. And I also wanted to point out that the first time I made this bag, I made it as written, and I kind of struggled with the construction of having all the separate pieces of the gusset, which is why I decided to create one full gusset piece. And it took me several times of making these bags before I could get nice crisp corners. So if you find that you're making this bag and you're having a hard time getting pointed edges, just keep trying. Don't get down on yourself. This might look easy, quote unquote, but this is not my first or third of these bags. I've made several of these and I haven't recorded it yet because they've been selling so quick and it's a lengthy bag to make. But I just wanted to point that out. Like, don't compare my, 10th bag with your first, okay? Just keep practicing. This was the first bag pattern that I ever tried to do anything like this with the like snipping and turning and trying to make it all fit and be even. And I definitely still run into issues with it. It's not a perfect science, but we are our own worst critics. And so I just want to be the first one to tell you, like, just keep going, keep practicing. This is not the end of the world, but with more practice, your corners will get crispier. All right, let's make the lining. We're going to work on the pocket that does not have the turning hole in it. So it's going to be the pocket that has the big interior. So first thing is we need to do the pocket bottom and the pocket interior. So I'm going to peel my double stick tape from the top edge of the pocket bottom. And then I'm going to take my zipper tape and I'm going to scoop my pull all the way over. And you can see I cut mine really long, and I did that intentionally so that I can move my pull totally out of the way when I'm working on this. But so right side down along that top edge there. And then you're going to take your pocket lining and peel one edge. Now, if yours is directional, keep that in mind whenever you're deciding which way to face it. So you're going to line up, create a zipper sandwich, and then we're going to go stitch this across the top. So I want to take the side that's smaller, which is actually the pocket bottom, and I'm going to flip that down to expose my zipper tape and finger press, and I'm going to stitch just underneath here. 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so this is what yours should look like. Next, what we're going to do is we need to tape this edge of the zipper pocket lining to this back edge of the zipper tape. So I'm just going to fold this down, finger press, and then fold it right back up and tape it into place. Just like that. And then we need to take the really narrow piece, the zipper top, and then that is going to go right side down along the raw edge. And then we're going to go stitch across and then flip it up and top stitch just like we did down here. All right, next up we need to take the two that are the same size, and those go along either side just like this. And then we're going to clip one. I'm going to pull my zipper pull into the pocket area and then lay this guy, clip. Now I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to stitch down both and then flip and top stitch. All right, this is where we're at right now. If you have any overhang, that's totally fine. We're going to trim this whole panel up once we're done, so don't fret. And then lastly, we need to take our topper piece, and that is going to go right along, you guessed it, the top edge. If it's a little bit more narrow than the width of the panel, that's fine. Just center it, because like I just said, we're going to trim this to be a specific size once these are all assembled. Now, if you want to add a fun little tag, I find that adding it right here in this seam is really cute. Otherwise, if you do it down here, it's really deep in the bag and it's kind of hard to see. Okay, so same as before, top stitch, flip up, stitch, flip up, top stitch. All right, here is the completed side panel. And now what we need to do is run some measurements and we're going to trim this up. So we need the whole panel to be 10.5 inches tall. And at the top, it's going to be 11 inches wide and it's going to taper to be 10 inches wide. Okay, so I'm going to start by squaring up my top edge here, and I'm going to find my center down here at the bottom. So I'm just going to lay my ruler. So here's my center, and then now I know that I need it to be 10 inches wide at the bottom, so I'm going to measure 5 inches over and mark, and then another 5 inches over and mark. And now I know that I can, from my top corner here, I'm going to lay my ruler, and then I'm going to trail it to that mark that I just made. And I don't want to use my rotary blade over my zipper tape, so I'm going to trim that down really quick. And then now, top corner here, and then tapered to that mark that we just made. And then now we can trim up to get 10.5 inch in height. So I'm going to turn it toward me so that I can have a better eye on what I'm doing. When I stitched this little panel, it got a little askew, so I'm going to do what I can to even that out. So I'm eyeing this line here and this line down here. And it's pretty darn close, so I'm not gonna be pressed about that. So 10.5 inches down and trim up from the bottom edge. There we are. So now this panel is complete and we need to work on the remaining zipper panel. We're going to repeat these steps pretty similarly, but we're just going to treat this back pocket a little bit different. Last thing that we need to do to finish off this pocket, because I will forget unless I do it now, is I want to make my sunglasses pocket and attach it here so that I don't forget it in the final construction. So the top angled edge of my sunglass pouch, I put some double stick tape on the back. So peel that. I'm just going to fold it over. It's about 3/8 of an inch of a fold, but just fold over, make sure that it's nice and even across the whole top. Now I'm going to go to my machine. I'm going to top stitch this. So once you get that top stitch, you're just going to fold it in half. And I like to put a couple clips in here just to hold everything in place. And now this side where the raw edges are, this is going to be in the seam when the bag is during the final construction. So I just need to really pay attention to my stitches down here along the bottom. So you can leave the pouch squared off or you can round up. It's totally up to you. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste this side. I'm going to pivot, and with regular stitch length, I'm going to sew, and then I'm going to round out this edge down here. During that process, I'm going to lay my tag right here, and stitch that into place. I really like this little placement recently. It's a fun little peekaboo for an additional labeling option. That's where we're at. So now I just need to trim up this little corner that I cut. And then to ensure that when the bag is being used, the cork doesn't start to like pill up and create little fuzzies, I'm going to put a little bit of Mod Podge just along that raw edge there. Now I'm using the matte Mod Podge, just the yellow label. And I use Mod Podge to seal my edges where I'm not going to paint them with a color. If you're going to use edge paint and paint a color, then you need to be using base coat for this. All right, got it all attached. I just aligned the top edge of my pouch with this top stitch line here and just basted it into place. All right, we're going to work on the remaining panel now, and this is one that has the two separate pieces for the pocket lining so that we can leave the birth hole. So we're going to assemble it the same. It's all going to come together the same. It's just that these pieces are separated on the bottom, and then once we get to a certain point in the process, we're going to angle the bottom. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're just going to start by taking the pocket bottom, and I want you to be aware of this. It's all very similar in sizing, so make sure that you have your correct pieces. So the pocket bottom, peel the tape, stick your zipper right side down. Okay, and then we are going to take the smaller of the two cuts. So the bigger one is the top. Here's the bottom for the lining. So I'm taking the smaller one and I'm going to make my zipper sandwich. All right, I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to stitch, and then I'm going to fold down just the pocket bottom and top stitch. All right, that's what we're looking like. So now we just need to fold our pocket lining down out of the way. And then we're going to create another sandwich with the pocket top right side down, and then the pocket bottom, or the pocket lining, like so. Stitch, flip just the pocket top up, top stitch. All right, this is what we're looking like right now, and what you should see is that your two pocket panels line up here along this bottom edge. And so now what I want to do is I need to stitch my pocket closed, but I'm going to leave my second birthing hole down here. It doesn't need to be really large because we're just going to be pulling up the lining through it to close off the big birthing hole. So all that to say, I'm just going to come in, I'm going to angle in probably just enough to keep it out of my stitch line for whenever I add my side pieces here. So I'm going to get as close as I can up here to the top, and then just come in probably about 1/2 inch. And I'm going to sew my straight edge along the bottom, and I'm going to do my little L shape, which if you're familiar with my work at all, then you know that I stitch a little L. It might be hard to pick up on camera, but like this, and then I stitch straight down off the panel. And then I find that whenever I go to close up this birth hole, having those little edges there, you can pull on it to create tension, and the raw edges just flip right in. So that is what you'll see me do. And so I'm just going to follow this rough angle line there. So I'm picking up just the pocket bottom to expose both of my pocket linings here. And then I'm just going to start close to my zipper tape and stitch until I'm onto the cotton edge that does not have the interfacing, and then create that little L stitch. It'll be a little bit easier to see here. Down, across, down. Repeat that over here. Oops. Okay, I'm just going to trim this up just to get it out of the way of the stitch lines that I will be making here in a moment when I'm attaching the rest of my pieces. All right, so now we are going to finish attaching our side pieces just like we did before. So the two pieces here, stitch, flip, top stitch, and then the topper goes right side down, stitch, flip, top stitch. All right, both panels are done. I did go ahead and I squared up and did my measurements here, so they are both ready to go. And now we just need to prep the gusset, and then we can attach our panels to this, and then our interior will be ready to go into our exterior. So first things first, because I had to cut mine in two because I didn't have enough fabric to cut it in one, I need to piece these together. Now you'll notice that I did not cut the gusset top pieces. I alleviated that because I'm attaching it down here. So if you want to do one big piece, or you want to do 2 separate pieces, or you want to do all the different pieces, it's your choice. The choice is yours and yours alone. And if you're a fellow millennial, you might remember that, where that saying comes from. But anyways, before I lose you entirely, we just need to lay them right sides together, and I'm going to stitch my bottom edge here using my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then if you want to, you can stitch it or butterfly it and stitch it down either side. All right, she's all stitched together, and I want to do a little bulk reduction technique. Now, the way that we trimmed our linings, I did that intentionally to reduce the sagginess or bagginess of the lining once it's inside the exterior. Because we used the same measurements to cut out our lining as our exterior, they are the same exact size, but the lining needs to be a little bit smaller in order to fit inside the exterior once it's all done. So we tapered and we trimmed our main panels, but I also want to taper and trim my gusset as well. So down here on the center, whether or not you pieced yours, it's going to work the same way. I'm going to fold it in half on my center line, and I'm going to trim 1/2 inch in toward my center. The same way that we tapered on our lining panels, I'm going to line up at the top corner, and I'm going to taper in 1/2 inch on both of these long edges. So now if you need to, you might want to go back and add some stay stitches here along the midline if you did piece yours together, so that way your stitches don't come undone whenever we're making the bag. When we start pulling on this and applying tension, we don't want these stitches to pop. All right, gusset is all ready to go. So what I've done is I found my center here on the lining, and I'm going to start by lining up the center of my gusset to that center point. Now, working on this lining, I'm going to work from the center out, just because there's very likely going to be some overhang at the tops, just because of the trimming down and the tapering and things of that nature. It does change the shape of the interior. So I want to maintain my center line here. So I'm just going to kind of work backwards, but I am going to do the 1/2 inch snip and then angle up on my sides, and then hopefully it's not too much overhang. We do want to get as close as possible to this top edge, because this is the same width as the exterior top edge. So yeah, I'm just going to see what happens, see where we get, and then we'll go from there. All right, now I'm going to go stitch along all 3 of these edges just like we did for the exterior. Got it all stitched in, and it looks so nice and crisp down in there, those corners. So I really hope that this sizing works, because if not, I'm going to be really sad. Something else that I was thinking of is, because I couldn't get all the way to the top here with my 4.5 inch wide gusset, I think if you ease out on your seam allowance, or maybe not you, I'm talking to myself right now, but if you find yourself in the same boat, if you ease out on your seam allowance a little bit, the goal is to have the top edge of the bag be the same width as the exterior. So that way the top sits very nicely, but then to have the interior bag be a decent size smaller, or decently smaller, so that it nests nicely and isn't saggy and like bubbly down in there. So I don't know. We're just going to take it as it goes. I'm going to trim down all of my edges really well. And I am leaving about the top inch, just like on my exterior. Okay, so we're going to mirror all of that with the remaining lining panel, except we need to be sure to leave a big birth hole on this side. The reason that we're leaving the birth hole on this side is because that's where this birth hole is too, and we want them to be as close together as possible so that we don't have to mess with the bag as much to struggle to pull from the opposite side. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to ease this side in, and hopefully it's all even. If so, that'll be a good sign. But yeah, wish me luck. All right, it looks like it meets up pretty well, so that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go stitch this side with the gusset side face up on my machine. Okay, all stitched. Now I just need to trim. I'm gonna trim these top edges off and then my seam allowances as well. All right, I've got my bags flipped in the correct orientation. So lining is right side out. Exterior is right side in, so wrong side out. And we need to put the two together. And I'm just going to do that by putting the lining on the inside. Now I'm going to start at my seams and get them as close as possible, and then clip all the way around and hope that everything fits nicely, because I had that pretty decent discrepancy that I had to trim off. So yeah, let's go for it. So what I noticed is that fit-wise, it's good, but my corner here doesn't meet up exactly, and I'm just gonna run it. I'm not gonna try to concern myself too much with that. It is what it is, you know? It's a handcrafted item. So from here, we need to go and top stitch around the entire top edge. You can do 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, totally up to you. I will be doing a 1/4 inch. I put a big book under my machine and removed my extension table, and so now I kind of have a faux free arm, cylinder arm, and it gives me room to stitch from the exterior side. So I'm just going to pick a spot and get started. Stitched. If you want to, you can trim it up. I don't really find that it's super necessary unless I have a really crazy spot, but that's not even that bad. So now we're just going to flip through our big birthing hole that we left in the actual side panel and gusset. Okay, everything looks great. I'm really happy with how everything is situated and laying. And I tucked everything back in just so that I could take a peek at the lining and make sure that I didn't have any saggy areas before I closed up my birthing holes. But since I've already done my top rim here, I'm just going to go and top stitch this real quick, and then we'll close up our birth holes down in here. It's looking so good. I absolutely love it. Now we just need to finish this bad boy off. So I'm going to unzip the pocket that has the birthing hole. I'm going to reach in and I'm going to grab and pull this open seam through the pocket. And then as best as possible, I'm just going to clip along the whole bottom edge and then go stitch it closed. I just want to trim down this excess here. We'll tuck that back in through the pocket hole. And then, very carefully, we're going to pull our pocket out. And it is semi-attached on the side, so it's going to resist this. You're not going to have a whole lot of working space here. I'm just going to flip my bottom corners out and then clip and stitch this as well. All right, I just need to tuck everything back in and get it laid nicely. Look at that, she is a beauty. So we just need to add the external hardware, and that is these D-ring connectors here, and then I'm going to do one snap right in the center. I think this bag would be wonderful with an inset zipper as well. You could really add all sorts of different closures here. If I had more runway, I would probably do them here to hide behind my straps, but I brought my rivets up a little high for that. So in the middle she goes. So the way that I do that is I'm going to clip my bag front and back together. And I'm trying to ensure that my top edges are aligned. And then I'm also going to line up my straps. You can see this one back here is not in alignment. So I'm just going to slide it until my straps are in alignment with each other. And the top of my edge here looks good. And what you should see is that your side seams also meet up. So right there and right there. Okay, so once you get all that figured out, what you want to do is mark where you're going to punch your hole. So I'm going to do mine probably about 3/4 of an inch down and centered in between my straps here. So it's just under 5 inches wide, so it's 2.5. So right about there. And you can put yours wherever you want, of course. This is your bag. I just want to be extra careful in making sure that all of my top edges are aligned, because we're going to punch right through the front and the back at the same time. And there's nothing more scary than punching through a fully completed bag. All right, so double cap rivets. I'm going to attach one side to this side of the bag and the other to the other side. All right, she's installed, Ritz to go. And then lastly, what I need to install is my side panel hardware. So I will be using my big guys for that. So just going to place this right over this seam from the gusset top to the gusset to the main part of the gusset. So once it's centered, I'm just going to mark my spots and then punch the holes, and using rivets, install these here. All right, the bag itself is now complete. She is a beauty. Here are the side connectors here. And so the last thing that we need to do to complete the bag is to make the strap. So let's get to that. So I cut the length of my strap. It is 55 inches by 1.5 wide. And I drew a line right down the center here. And just like we made the handles is how we're gonna finish the strap. So I'm gonna put a piece of 1/2 inch tape over top of this line, peel the paper, and then fold my long edges in toward the center, being sure that my edges are nice and butted up together so that there's no gap here. And then I'm going to stitch all 4 stitch lines, just like we did here, to finish up my strap. So I'll see you back here in just a sec. Okay, strap is all stitched. I love the quad stitch line with contrast thread. It is so good. All right, I'm gonna take the side that I started my stitches on and go up and over the middle bar here, being sure that my middle seam is down. So I want the middle seam to face each other here. Oh, sorry, Drizzy. You're a little close, darling. All right, going to flip with the seam side up and find my other end. Slide a lobster ring with the loop, or with the clasp itself facing out, facing the right side of the strap. Being careful not to twist anything, I'm going to feed my strap back up and over that middle bar like that, and then attach this remaining clasp over here. Beautiful, fantastic. I'll take 14 of them. Drizzy and I would like to say thank you for watching this video. We hope that you enjoyed it. So as you can see, it's perfect size for a cat. I kind of just put her in it and she just like settled. I think she likes it. Anyways, I think she likes the bag. I hope that you liked the video and I will see you guys soon. Bye.